Hi everyone, thanks for joining the session. We are here today to talk about SAP running on Microsoft Azure. We have the privilege to be today with Cameron Gardner. Hello Cameron.
Hello.
You are the SAP on Azure guy at Microsoft. Please tell us a little bit more about your role.
So I work in the Azure Customer Advisory team. My role is focused on enabling our SAP customers to run on our Azure public cloud. Before joining Microsoft, I was a SAP consultant for many years, and I joined Microsoft about 12 years ago, initially working in the SQL Server product group and later moving to the Azure development team.
And the reason why we work together is because I'm helping partner in the region in APAC, adopting SAP on Azure. So we're working and making things happen with our SAP expert partners and deploying solutions for our customers. So welcome to this session. Again, we have a packed agenda for the next 40-ish minutes. We're going to talk about a lot of things regarding SAP on Azure news. So it's pretty much a session that requires some prior knowledge that you have on SAP on Azure. We'll be focusing during this session on mainly a series of updates on the hot topics that are running those days, and cloud has that fantastic characteristic that it's changing every day and bringing innovation every day. So that's really what we are about to do today, to cover those topics and give you some of the guidance. So we start with a recap on Microsoft and SAP commitment. We'll talk a little bit about HANA, Enterprise Cloud and Azure. Do we have to choose? And then we talk about the VM and compute options for running SAP on Azure, especially in the region, in APAC. Then a little bit of a certification update. So what can we run in which conditions inside Azure Cloud? And then a very hot topic as well, building SAP disaster recovery plans with Azure, and keep for the end the latest technology updates around running SAP on Azure on various latest Microsoft platform and third-party solutions. So here we go, SAP on Azure. What is all about? Well, this is first an executive partnership that we had for more than 20 years. It means that we are working together, we are co-engineering, we are used to test our product to run best together. So it's not something new. It has been enriched a lot those last few years under Satya arriving at Microsoft. Just to summarize that, I think it's fair to say that SAP runs on Azure, and basically Microsoft runs on SAP. So there's a mutual commitment. We are largely using SAP, and SAP committed and are using basically Azure for running even their internal application.
Yeah, this is true.
So this migration, this movement that we see from customer migrating their SAP estate on Azure, this is something that also Microsoft IT has went through and has lived for the last couple of years. I think now there has a very significant part of our SAP estate running on Azure, is it?
The overwhelming majority of Microsoft's large SAP system is completely deployed on Azure, and this is a single instance ECC6 system where almost all of the revenue for Microsoft is running through the system, runs on Azure M series.
Good. So what's in it for a customer? Why people are going to basically run SAP on Azure? So we see about a lot of dev and test environment, disaster recovery, or even archiving scenario where they are basically taking the data on Azure because they don't want to run a system on premises, a very old system, legacy system. Just want to put it on Azure, and basically once or twice a year when they need to turn it up, they put it on and they get the info, and they only pay when they use it. And we of course see a lot of production environment, a lot of production systems moving to cloud as well. Now the savings, and we're going to talk about that in a couple of case study at the end, but one of the output that we see, one of the outcome is really the cost saving, more agility, facility to easiness to deploy solution fast, and saving, as we mentioned, on the cost and on the total cost of ownership. So this partnership, we are basically working on it every every day, let's say. We had a lot of announcement during the last SAP Azure, during the last events from SAP and during the last event from Microsoft. If we look at one of the events that happened in the last few weeks, Sapphire now, 2018, there has been a couple of announcements. So we've been working on the M series for quite now a couple of months. Started Singapore data centers being pioneering it in Asia, and now we have it available in more than 12 regions worldwide. So the compute power for M series, roughly speaking, we're talking about things between 192 gig of RAM up to 4 TB.
Yes.
So that's good. This is innovation, but we have even more innovation that we announced at Sapphire, Cameron.
Yes, so Microsoft has announced the 12 terabyte version of M series, the M series version 2. This is in development, and there will be more details around the timetable for this coming in the future. It's based on the latest Intel CPU, and this will be certified for SAP HANA systems up to 12 terabytes.
So we talk about the virtual machines. If we want to go to HANA, virtual machines will use M or MV2 in the future. We also have option to use hardware directly. This is what we call HANA large instances.
That's true. So Microsoft has two approaches for running HANA workloads. So we have the virtual machines, which today is up to 4 terabytes, and in the future up to 12 terabytes. We also have bare metal physical appliances, and the reason for this is that the capabilities and performance envelope for the bare metal appliance is always going to be ahead of and exceed the envelope for a virtual machine. On top of the performance characteristics, there are also the certification requirements. So it's much faster for us to bring the HANA large instances certified and ready for all HANA workloads than it is for virtual machines, which require additional certification and validation.
This is what we mean by TDI. So TDI is specification from SAP, and we rely directly on those specifications, the hardware that we deploy, right?
That's correct. And today the maximum size available is 24 terabytes, which is large enough for nearly every customer out there.
That's pretty impressive size of RAM, yeah. Kind of hard to imagine, but yeah, good.
So this is a single operating system image. This is not scale out. So for scale out, it's even larger, but this is for a single instance of HANA 24 terabytes.
So if we want to do scale out for all app workloads, we can go up to how much?
At least 60 terabytes.
Okay, good, fair enough. That's a huge amount of RAM, huge compute power. Last of the many announcements that was done at Sapphire, SAP Cloud Platform on Azure. A couple of words on that.
So the SAP Cloud Platform Foundation is now certified and available. So we're onboarding the specific services. So customers who want to use SCP, SAP Cloud Platform on Azure, I'd really encourage, please contact ourselves. And our email addresses will be at the back of the presentation.
Good. So one of the many announcements, just to have a quick recap, we talk about the HANA large instances, we talk about the virtual machine. Just a quick recap on the availability that we have for those virtual machines. So we start with the very simplest possible scenario, and that's worth mentioning it because we're the only cloud platform to offer an SLA on single instance virtual machine. So if I just take one SAP server, on one application server and one DB, I can have an SLA of 99.9 for the platform. So for the running the underlying infrastructure environment, that's what we are offering. So already not too bad.
And we have a larger number of customers out there who have not absolutely mission-critical SAP systems who are leveraging this single VM SLA.
But if you want to go higher into the high availability, we have, of course, additional solutions. So we have availability sets for now quite a long time, which offer you protection against failure within a data center. So just to recap on the infrastructure, within Azure, we have what we call regions. A region is a set of data centers. So for Singapore, we have 3 data centers. And inside this data center, we have multiple clusters for storage, compute, and network. And an availability set will make sure that basically your machine will run on different clusters. So that if one cluster fails, then you have another machine with the same role, which is redundant within the data center. Yeah. That's the availability set. And we can go further with availability zones. Cameron?
So SAP is documented, tested and supported on Azure availability zones, and in fact we are working with a customer who has deployed this in Singapore today, and we talk a little bit more about this in a later slide. But our documentation and the blog site where I blog has more details on how to deploy this. And this delivers a 99.99% minimum SLA. Many customers achieve much more.
Yep, and when we're doing basically the availability zones, what we decide is to spread the instances amongst those different data centers that we mentioned previously.
That's correct, though we do recommend to keep the database server and the SAP application servers as close as possible for the best performance.
So if a picture worth 1,000 words, let's look a little bit of sample architecture that we see here. So that's really what we see from some customer adopting SAP on Azure with availability zones right now. And you have the link on the slide, aka.ms/SAPHA, that describe those architecture. Here you see that we have 2 availability zones out of the 3, and what we did into this architecture diagram is we having the SAP central services. So we have one instance active, another passive into availability zone 1 and 2. We are creating a load balancer. So this is what we call a standard load balancer, because the standard load balancer has this capacity to spread the traffic across the different data centers. And then we have the DBMS layer using the same technology. So across 2 availability zones with the load balancer. Just something that's worth mentioning here, the replication of the data at the database layer is done by the database technology. So if we're using HANA, for instance, we're using HSR, SQL Server.
Always on.
And the set of technology, yeah. So as you mentioned, we have tested the capacity that, okay, by default, it's probably better if the whole system runs in the same availability zone. So we have the application server and the DBMS server into the same zone. But of course, if we have a failure of one of the cluster, it is totally supported that we have the application server zone 1 and using the DB on zone 2.
So the consultants in the audience are the basis people. There's a report built into most SAP systems. In SE38, you can run SSA cat and run ABAP meter. And the columns you want to check are DB access and DBE access. That will tell you your latency between your app server and your DB server. And obviously, the less latency, the better.
Excellent. So that's it for the quick overview. So we hear a lot this question from customer, and we do a lot of events joined with SAP. They join us at our event, we join them at our event. And very often customer would ask you and say, hey, Cameron, this is really fine. SAP is talking about HEC and you're talking about Azure. What should I choose? And the good news is, well, you don't have to choose, because basically you can do the benefits of both worlds. You can use HEC running on Azure. Can you, so we see in the picture the stack of the different services here. Can you tell us a little bit more on how does it work exactly?
So SAP HANA Enterprise Cloud is an offering from SAP where they manage the hosting and the application management service, all in a bundle at a fixed price. for you. Typically, SAP is partnered with data center providers, maybe HP or NTT or IBM, the data center provider, and then they may work with other managed services providers. It could be TCS, could be IBM. We've been working very closely with SAP to make sure that our customers have an option to run SAP HANA Enterprise Cloud on the Azure platform and benefit from the dynamic capabilities of Azure Cloud in conjunction with SAP's HANA Enterprise Cloud offering.
So basically all of this variety of option is basically here to serve customer what's best for them and the best mix that they want to pick, because they can run heck. They might also very much want to go with one of our many partners that are providing SAP on Azure.
Yeah, the strategy from Microsoft and the strategy I hear customers want Microsoft is to give choices. So HANA Enterprise Cloud is definitely one of those choices, or hosting directly with our very capable partner network. All of the main system integrators, such as TCS, Infosys, Cognizant, Accenture, and many others are partners we work with each and every day. You and I, we're deeply involved with a project with T-Systems today.
Absolutely. So that's really for offering you the widest range of choices. If you're used to work with some guys who have great services, that's totally fine. You don't have to replace the whole stack. You just say, okay, we're moving to Azure because that comes into our strategy, and you can do it your pace.
Yeah, I think the important concept with cloud is choice and flexibility and dynamic and quick response.
So another hot topic, Cameron.
Yes.
So this is very specific to SAP when we're going to cloud, right? You can basically do anything SAP on Azure as long as it's dev and test. You can spin up any VM, play with it. It will work because it's just basically a VM where you play. But when it comes to production, things getting serious, you need the VM you're executing your workload to be certified. Just for information of our audience, certification process, what does it do and what does it mean exactly?
Okay, without going into too many details, but Microsoft and SAP have been working together since more than 20 years on certification, since the first versions of SAP were ported to Windows initially, and a few years later SAP was ported onto SQL Server. So this process is nothing new for us at Microsoft. So we have colleagues of mine who are based in Waldorf in Germany at SAP's headquarters, and we also have a number of SAP resources who are based in our headquarters in Redmond. We have colleagues who are focused on nothing other than, for example, HANA certification, running HWCCT in various configs, standalone configs, scale-out configs, in order to validate the certification requirements that SAP put in place.
So a certification, in a sense, is kind of a guarantee of performance or test against that amount of load?
Yeah, so SAP have some quite strict KPIs that, especially for HANA, but also for NetWeaver applications as well. New versions of databases, new versions of operating systems, but the certification requirements for HANA are very strict and quite precise.
So this is what you see on this page here, and very often a consultant that I visit say, hey, I want to do SAP on Azure, where should I start? And I give them this very link because this is the source of truth for anything SAP on Azure. So what it gives you is basically the view of which SKU, which VMs of Azure are certified for HANA, NetWeaver, which version, which product, which combo of OS and DB layers. And this links us to the even ultimater source of truth, if we can say this word, which is the SAP Note.
Yeah, and the SAP certified IaaS platform contains the original source of truth about what SAP applications are certified on, what Azure VMs and HANA large instances. And there are also conditions there such as which minimum operating system requirements. For Azure M series, there's a requirement to use the right accelerator. Over and on top of this, we have some of our best practices and guidance. For example, one might be to use accelerated networking.
Okay, now we are going to cover those topics actually just right now. So if we look at this IaaS platform like directory, this is the extract that is related to the M series. So we see here the various version of M series that goes up to 4 TB of RAM. So the M series are SKU that we mentioned are available in a little bit more than 12 regions as we speak. Yep. This is the SKU made for HANA. It is certified. You mentioned about right accelerator, which is one of the prerequisites to deploy it. Can you just give us quick words around what it is exactly?
Very, very briefly. We probably don't have too much time to dive into it, but there is a non-volatile module inside the M series that drastically improves performance for writing to the HANA transaction log, or for other DBMSs may be able to use the right accelerator feature as well. But it's actually a hard requirement to use this on the HANA transaction log disk.
One of the very hot questions that you and I probably get every week, or even more frequently, is I want to do my SAP on Azure Stack. So, slight difference?
Yes, so Azure Stack, we do see the demand from customers, and please contact us if you're interested in this topic. So Azure Stack today is 12 nodes, in the future increasing to 16. As mentioned, they're very strict requirements for HANA, so in the medium term, I don't think we could talk about Azure Stack running SAP HANA, certainly not in production. But for SAP NetWeaver, it's a topic that we're discussing. We would love to hear more from you about your requirements in this area.
Again, so keep till the last minute. We have our email slide to reach us on those scenarios that you wanna work on. And another very important topic that, again, I see a lot of partners here in Asia are say, hey, we run Business One. We want to move away from maybe the small data center that we have to get benefit on maybe an SLA on single instance, for instance. Yeah. That's already a huge improvement. So we have Business One, which is certified right now to run on SQL Server.
Yeah, so a lot of the world's Business One systems run on SQL Server today. So that's fully certified. You can choose any suitable VM, and that's certified and supported today. For HANA, we have the D14 V2 that is certified for up to 40 users, and we are in the process of certifying the smaller M series to run Business One on HANA. We expect that to come in the next few months.
Okay, very good update then for our partners and customer in APAC. Next topic about the availability of the SKUs, of the different SKU in Asia. So that's probably for our people seeing the slide in full screen now, but just to recap on the different data centers that we have in Southeast Asia. So Southeast Asia means Singapore, and we have the pair data center in Hong Kong. Then Australia, India, and Northeast Asia. So we have the GS first. Let's start with the GS because we still see this VM in some listings.
So generally I'd recommend customers deploy on the more modern EV3 series. The GVM is now relatively old, and we see customers transitioning away from GS5 and on to EV3. A couple of things about GS5, for example, it doesn't support accelerated networking. So I would tend to recommend customers move to the EV3.
Yeah, so especially EV3 has a much more broader coverage in the regional presence, so which is certified for now. SAP NEDB, SAP HANA is planned on EV3, as we just covered a little bit of words around that. We have the M series and the fractional M series that are in Singapore, Australia, India, and a couple of Northeast Asia data center, so Japan, where we can deploy it. And HANA large instances, which are present mainly in Japan and Australia, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct, and lots of customers live and running on those today.
So this is changing every day, so we would probably recommend you to refer to the link below, which details the capacity per region on a different SKU for the different workloads that you want to deploy.
So an additional topic for the customers particularly in New Zealand and Australia, who are not exclusively but government customers, there are 2 additional data centres located in Canberra, and these are designed for customers, maybe federal government from Australia and New Zealand, who have a higher security requirement, protected level and above. So these data centers have been built up and are ready to go for government customers.
Excellent. Another of the very hot topics that we get questioned a lot around using Azure for SAP backup first and for SAP disaster recovery plan. I think this is one of the very big differentiator that we have, is that we have a set of technologies that are out in the box already. Yeah. When you choose Azure, you have access to all those services already. So just want to do a little bit of rationale before on how you use those different services. Because people would say, hey, who needs a disaster recovery plan? I just need to replicate VMs, right? Which is a little bit of a shortcut.
Okay, so in SAP application servers and central services are the perfect candidate for Azure Site Recovery. And Azure Site Recovery is built on 2 pillars. One is a replication technology, and the other is a orchestration and execution engine. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Think of Azure Site Recovery replication as basically log shipping for virtual machines. Most of the audience will know what log shipping is for database. So Azure Site Recovery's replication is essentially log shipping for virtual machines. Now, SAP application servers are really good candidates because there isn't a lot of file system activity under normal circumstances. So they actually replicate very easily. SAP database servers, on the other hand, there is a lot of changes down at the file system level, and also most DBMSs keep a large context in memory, and trying to quiesce or freeze the file system and commit that memory context to disk is generally not recommended. So if I summarize, it would be use Azure Site Recovery for your application server and central services, and then use your native DBMS replication tool to replicate the database. This also allows you to leverage features like point-in-time recovery, being able to roll logs forward from existing backups. It's generally recommended.
Excellent. So you will find the link here, SAP DR, that's a link to your blog, Cameron, on the white papers that you wrote on the subject. So a lot of very good readings there. Just want to cover a little bit of topic as well here. We hear a lot about using ASR for migration of your environment. Is this a scenario, and what would be the limit to that?
Absolutely. So we have customers, and we actually have a good case study on the Azure Site Recovery website about an SAP customer who used Azure Site Recovery to replicate their SAP environment into Azure, and then they cut over and migrated to Azure. So in general, we would say that if a customer is running on a modern operating system with a modern database and with up-to-date SAP kernel, then this is very suitable technology. Mm-hmm. However, a lot of customers out there, their SAP landscape might be running on an old, unsupported operating system. Their database might be out of maintenance. So we would really encourage customers not to carry that legacy over. And also there are a lot of customers who are running on IBM AIX and HP Unix, and these platforms have no future in reality, and there's no public cloud facility for these proprietary architectures. So SAP provides a system copy procedure which has two parts, a heterogeneous part and a homogeneous part. So heterogeneous would be if you're moving from, say, AIX and DB2 and you want to move to Windows SQL, or you want to move to HANA. SAP has introduced new and improved tools such as the latest versions of DMO allow you to do the required upgrade and conversion to HANA all at the same time. And we have customers who are actually doing this right as we speak.
Exactly. Okay, so again here a variety of options. Probably, as you mentioned, all the operating system, we probably want to refresh that when you go into the cloud.
Definitely.
For things quite recent, this is a viable option, at least for the application layers.
Yeah, and in terms of capacity, sizing, customers moving 10, 15 terabytes in a weekend, this is generally no problem. If you have timing issues, please contact us. We've seen lots of customer projects doing this.
Excellent. In terms of ASR, so Azure Site Recovery, we have, of course, a deep integration with the operating system because, as you mentioned, it's log chipping for the virtual machine. So we have a tight link with the underlying layers of the VM, of the operating system. So we announced support for SUSE 12.
So SUSE 12 is now supported for the Azure to Azure scenario, which is, say, replicating from Singapore Azure to Hong Kong Azure. Azure Site Recovery, of course, also works on physical servers and on VMware and on Hyper-V. All the scenarios are covered. So SUSE 12 is covered. Please check the support matrix. There are some kernel dependencies there. Red Hat 7.5 is supported, and Oracle Linux, which is obviously a supported operating system for SAP on Azure. This will be released end of the year. Features like managed disks are supported. Accelerated networking, we're working on better support of this. Today you can replicate a VM that has accelerated networking, but accelerated networking may be undone during the failover. So there are a couple of additional requests that people have contacted me about, and that is what I call transcontinental Azure Site Recovery. So this is a case where, say, you might be a customer in Australia and you want your disaster recovery to be in United States.
Okay. Because just to precise, right now, when you are running in an Azure data center, you can use ASR to replicate to another Azure data center, but by default you cannot go outside of the region.
Yeah, so the proximity is generally quite close. So again, if you click on the link in the slide, it will tell you which data centers. But there is a private preview, so for customers wanting to do this, please contact either of us. We can assist with this. And the other functionality that customers have asked me about is intra-region Azure Site Recovery. And this is, we spoke earlier about availability zones. Mm-hmm. So for example, in Singapore, if I have my production in availability zone 2, and I want my DR to be in availability zone 3. Uh-huh. So remember, Azure Site Recovery takes care of the replication of the VM. So if you apply Linux patches, SAP kernel patches, that will be picked up by Azure Site Recovery and replicated automatically. And Azure Site Recovery also orchestrates and sequences the startup of your disaster recovery system if you have some kind of DR event.
Yeah, that's a request we see quite often from customers. They say, hey, I want a DR, but I don't want it to go to Hong Kong. I want to still do it in Singapore, so that's the answer. Very good. So yeah, as the link, the support matrix to check all the prerequisites every time you're building your disaster recovery plan. Some more goodies coming up with additional platform updates. So we're talking about here first Microsoft platform, so support for SQL Server 2017.
Yes, released and generally available. Please follow the blog site. And in there you will see the SAP OSS notes that talk about the required support pack releases and the required SWPM releases. For those SAP Basis people and SQL Server customers, the support pack releases are pretty much the same as SQL 2016.
Very good. And as we speak, Windows Server 2019 is around the corner. We are already working?
Yes, so SAP in Germany are already testing Windows Server 2019. So this is a work in progress, and obviously SAP will not support this until Microsoft releases it.
That sounds fair.
This is one of the rules. But if there are customers out there who have a project go live, say towards the very end of 2019, please contact me. So we run pilot projects for customers who have go live dates very near to our product release dates, and they want to go live on the latest version of the operating system or database.
Excellent. A couple of notes around the guidance that you publish around Oracle ASM running on Azure.
So we realized that there are a lot of SAP customers out there who run Oracle, and they have a lot of investment into Oracle. They have very skilled DBAs. They have a lot of technologies around their Oracle platform. So they want to stay on Oracle database, which is a great idea and makes business sense. So we want customers running Oracle to have an absolutely first-class experience running on Azure. And one of the very good features that's been built into Oracle for a while is automatic storage management. So if you go to my blog site, you'll see some very helpful videos that will show you how to set up Oracle 12.2 running on Azure using automatic storage management. And this is really a combined effort of Microsoft and SAP and Oracle to get this certified and supported, and that process should be completed very soon. We already have worked with our partners, SAP and Oracle, and we do have some customers who have a customer-specific permission to run Oracle ASM in production today. And our partners, Oracle, have been very supportive and helpful.
Excellent. So, to recap, what did we learn during this session? I think there was quite a lot of topic that we covered. Microsoft runs on SAP, SAP runs on Azure.
Yes.
I think we're committed to provide customers the very best cloud platform to run.
Best cloud platform and widest choice.
Absolutely. We have tons of SAP skills people at Microsoft, so helping those basically customer going through this journey to make it happen as smooth as possible. Azure offers you the broadest set of compute options. So we mentioned VMs for any size. We mentioned HANA large instances if we need huge amount of RAM. Security and compliance, something that we didn't mention specifically during this session, but we have, as we speak, more than 78 offerings in terms of security and compliance. So that's something that customer going through Azure can rely on. Definitely, so ISO, SOC, and all the norms and insurance that we are doing things the best in the industry. We are the hybrid cloud company with many options. We discussed about Azure, Azure Stack. Yep. It's pretty much you choose the options that are best suitable for you. I think one of the very major points that you are working on every day is proven experience to run the largest SAP and migrate the largest SAP estates and landscapes to Azure.
Yes.
And of course, very fundamental, we are working with all the partners in the region and in the world to make this happen. So if you're working with a set of partners that you are happy with them, they are probably already doing SAP on Azure, so just ask them, they'll be happy to serve you into that purpose. One of the questions that you probably get as much as I get as well is, I'm totally fine to go SAP on Azure, but who did it before? So the very quick answer to that is customers.microsoft.com. You can search for SAP on Azure. There's many cases, including in Asia, that we've been working on. Many new ones are going to come in the next few weeks because we are just migrating them. But one of the very interesting cases is Malaysia Airlines, right?
Yes, so I was involved in this project pretty much from the beginning. This project is more than just a SAP migration project. This was in fact an entire data center migration. So this was a 10,000 square foot production data center, which shrank down to 500 square feet, and a 6,000 square foot DR site that was eliminated, now 0 square feet. SAP was one out of 122 applications, from lost and found, valet parking, cargo, crew rostering and scheduling, engineering. All of these applications were moved from various platforms. SAP was running on AIX and DB2. This was moved to Windows 2016 and SQL Server 2016. Those of you who follow my blog might have seen that I recently posted information that if a customer moves to Windows 2016 and SQL 2016, that means their technology platform is in support until 31st of December 2025, which is when SAP planned to finish supporting third-party databases. So this customer here is in, their platform is in technical support until its projected end of life. So they need no more technical upgrades. We will do the back-end infrastructure, storage, networking, compute servers. We will manage this transparently.
Very good. So all the rest inside customers.microsoft.com. There's many other rerouting tools, just to name one additional more.
And nearly every weekend we have a major go live of a customer somewhere around Asia, or every weekend around the world, but around Asia, just about every weekend there is a major customer moving on to Azure.
Oh yes, this weekend. Yeah, definitely. So, guys, thank you very much for tuning in and listening to us talking about this wonderful topic and the innovation going on. Please reach out to us. We put our email address so that you're able to basically reach out to us. Don't be shy, because basically SAP is a complicated subject, changing all the time.
Agree, and so there are topics such as certification of things like data tiering, dynamic tiering, scale out certification topics. These get way too complex for a session like this, so just email if you've got a question.
Cameron, thank you very much for your time.
Not a problem, pleasure to be here.
And thank you very much for tuning in. Cheers.